Chapter 1: A Bad Night. Kia. I turned the key. The engine clicked twice. I sighed as I let the ignition turn back. With another twist, I tapped the pedal. The engine clicked, then clicked some more. I looked out the window to the darkened grocery store. I hated closing. It was the worst. The lights above from the discount grocer, which was missing the last four and the first word completely, cast a yellow glow through my windshield. I sighed heavily. I didn't much like the dark. I only lived 5 minutes away by car. I could walk. But I didn't like the dark. With another flick and a kick, I tried the key again. The car responded with a series of clicks that sounded like a ticking bomb. I released my hold. I slammed my hands down on the steering wheel as a slew of curses left my lips. This was just fucking great. I stared out the window down the street towards home. So close yet so far. There were street lamps, but not the whole way. Well, maybe there was, but a good portion of them have been burned out for so long they may as not matter. I would be fine though. I could do this. There was no reason to be scared. Yet I could feel the fear creeping up my spine, threatening to grip my heart. I reached for my purse while still staring out the window. The handle caught on something as I pulled. Just as I looked down, the snag released, sending the contents of my well-endowed purse tumbling across the seat and the floor of the passenger side. The purse itself hung from a broken strap in my hand. Well, shit. I ran my fingers through my dirty blonde hair as I sucked in a calming breath. Didn't really work. I could feel anger and frustration bubbling to the surface. Why me? Wasn't my life crappy enough? Hadn't I suffered enough for one lifetime? Nothing had ever gone right for me. Was it too much to ask for one single night to not got to shit just one single time? Muttering more curse words, I started gathering the fallen items and hamming them into my broken purse. Of course I couldn't reach everything because of the damn seat belt. I pressed my thumb on the buckle. My thumbnail bent back. I jerked my hand back and shook it, then stuffed it in my mouth to stanch the blood and stifle a scream. The seatbelt threatened to choke the life from me. It was one of those that tried to save your life by never giving up. The more I struggled, the more it tightened. I pulled the thumb from my mouth, then ducked swiftly beneath the murderous belt. I looked back outside. I was pissed off enough now that the fear of the dark was pushed to the back of my mind. I swung open the door to my car. The hinges creaked with such protest I was surprised the door didn't just fall off. As I stepped out, I whacked my head on the car ceiling so hard my vision went blurry for a second and triggered my vertigo. I held my head in my hands, waiting for my swimming vision to settle. Oh my fucking god, could this night get any worse? I stomped around the blasted car. Between the dark and the vertigo, I didn't see the yellow concrete parking block. I tripped over it. As I fell, my hands came out in front of me to break my fall. The pavement bit into them, slicing them open. My knees hit next. I could feel the fresh road rash through my slacks. Tears of pain sprang to my eyes. I squeezed them away as I looked down at the small bits of gravel embedded in my hand. I was so furious I couldn't even form words. I stood lowly, using my car for balance. I brushed off my slacks. They were dirty, but at least there weren't any holes. I really couldn't afford new ones right now. I contemplated kicking the damn car, but with my luck the parking brake would fail and my car would roll backwards. I continued my trek to the other side of the car, this time stepping over the parking block. After a good bout of fumbling with the key, I managed to open the door with very little harm to myself. I snatched up the rest of the purse's contents and shoved them in my purse. There was one more thing I was missing, and it was fairly important. My stupid flip phone. That's right, you heard me, a freaking flip phone. I should be exempt from all this bad karma because I was reduced to a flip phone, normally reserved for the elderly, the technically inept, and the very, very poor. I knelt on the running board of the car and stuffed my head down next to the floor. I picked up the little keychain flashlight with a laser pointer at the other end. I pushed the flashlight on and scanned under the seat. The phone was almost all the way to the back seat. I reached my hand out for it. My fingers touched something sticky. I cringed. I couldn't even shake it off and I didn't know what it was. I squeezed my eyes shut and kept pushing forward. Finally my fingers grazed the phone. After another moment, the phone slid close enough I could wrap my hand around it and pull it to me. I shoved it in my bag, then wiped my sticky hand on a napkin in the side door. I didn't even want to know what that was. I pushed the lock down on the door and slammed the orange metal door shut. The door popped back open, hammering me in the hip. That was going to leave a lovely bruise. I rolled my eyes at the stupid car. I leaned against the door and shoved it with my hip until it clicked shut, ignoring the fresh pain it called up. I turned around to face the darkened parking lot. After a breath, I hiked the one working strap of my purse up over my shoulder, then pinched it with my arm. After one more breath, I started my journey. I only hoped my night didn't get any worse. Chapter 2: Darkness. I walked across the parking lot. My eyes locked on to the street corner. As my heart beat faster, the thoughts of the surrounding darkness pressed in. I held on to my anger. What did I have to lose? A crappy flip phone? Half a college education? Or even a one-bedroom apartment I shared with a roommate? There wasn't much here to hold on to. Well, my roommate wasn't so bad. My anger lessened a little as I thought of the spunky little Mila. In a fucked-up world, she somehow made everything a little brighter. Sometimes her bubbling over happiness was a bit annoying, but she had a heart of gold and was the only reason I managed to pay the bills. Without her, I'd never be able to afford the apartment on my own. It was nice having someone with a rich daddy. I got excited for a moment. Maybe I would catch up with her. She could be out here waiting for me and I wouldn't have to walk home in the dark. But probably not. She should be home by now. Maybe she was even making dinner and she always shared. She was kind like that, ever sweet, ever thoughtful. She made me want to be a kinder person. She seemed to be the only one that distracted me from this loneliness I felt. Not that I didn't like being alone, just that some part of me seemed like it was missing. I hastened towards the corner. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I reached the safety of the puddle of light. I panted while I waited for the walk signal. I had to get a grip. Nobody was even out here. What was I so afraid of? Once the walk signal flashed, I scurried across the road to the next light. I pinched my purse tighter to my side that I took one more deep breath as I exited the safety of the street lamp. I had to be brave. Fuck, Mila did this every night and she was just fine. She wasn't raped or mugged. She was even downright happy. Maybe I needed a little bit of darkness in my life. Maybe that was the trade-off for being happy. But fear was irrational. It wasn't something you could choose. For me, darkness was twofold. Not only did it conjure panic, but because of my vertigo, it also made me incredibly uncoordinated. It was like walking when you were plastered. But at least drunks could self-correct. My inner ears were so fucked up I had to crawl down the hallway wall just to take a piss at night. It was fucking terrible. As I left the lights behind, the buildings grew tall enough to block any moonlight. The darkness closed in. My eyes darted from every nook and cranny expecting. Well, I don't know what to jump out, but something scary. It could be a bad guy or a vampire or hella Juan Diego. An image of a slender white body with a mouthful of pointed teeth plagued my mind. My throat tightened. I could feel that fear surging through me again. I was being stupid. None of that was real. I watched too many movies and read too many books. There was nothing there. I knew it, but why did it feel like there was? I clutched my purse. If I looked, I knew there would be nothing. I could do this. I quickly swung a look back while I continued walking. Nothing followed me. See, I was just being stupid. I whipped my head back around, but now it was worse. Why did I have to look? I knew nothing was there, but my throat clenched so tightly I felt like I was choking. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. One more look. I swung around again. Nothing. See, it's nothing. My heart raced faster. I spun forward. More teeth flashed through my mind. And eyes and claws. Oh my God, why? I couldn't handle it. I started to jog. Why'd I have to do that? That just made it worse. I was moving so slow I had to move faster. To get away. My mind blanked. The street darkened and my feet flew faster. In a few moments I was fleeing at a sprint. I couldn't see where I was going because the vertigo was bouncing my vision. I started to careen sideways into the road. I tried to correct as my heart threatened to explode from my chest. As I over-adjusted, I ended up winging around the corner of a building. I had no idea where I was, but I couldn't stop. The darkness was still there, like it was chasing me. But I knew it was just irrational fear. I had to find light. Somewhere, anywhere. I had to get a grip. My feet pounded the pavement. My balance threatened to topple me over. I darted around another corner, then another. I was running out of stamina. I couldn't sprint like this forever, but my terror wouldn't let me stop. I flew around the next corner. Something tripped up my foot. I flew with my hands outstretched in front of me. As I hit the pavement, the asphalt tore me up again. Suddenly everything screamed in pain. I had ripped holes in pants. My hands, knees, and chin all stung. They started to burn, I assumed with blood. Only then did I realize someone was shouting at me. What the fuck? What is wrong with you? You came out of fucking nowhere. Don't you have any respect? What? My vision swam, but the streetlight overhead illuminated the area. I blinked and concentrated on the ground in front of me beneath my hands. My breath came in ragged gasps. I flipped over and sat staring at the jerking blob that was yelling at me. My vision settled on the object of my flight. It was a body. It was familiar. Oh, my God. Mila. I screamed frantically. Chapter 3 Murder. I scrambled across the ground towards her. The man yelling at me jumped out of the way. I didn't register what he was saying. Mila, I'm so sorry. My hand wrapped around her arm. She was cold. Mila. She lay still. Too still. Her face was frozen in a silent scream. Her eyes looked like she was in shock. They were too big, too wide. Mila. Oh my God. I spun on my injured knees, grounding them into the asphalt. I looked up to the man still shouting obscenities at me. What did you do? Did you kill her? Did you rape her? I screamed at him. What?
No. Fuck no.
She's my sister. Damn it. Who are you? How do you know her? I ignored the man and turned back to her. My arms closed around Mila's body as I pulled her into a hug. My breath still came in gulps as my lungs spasmed. Her body hung limp as I held her against me. I felt awkward. I wasn't really a hugging kind of person, but Mila was my friend. And now she was dead. She was the only good thing in my life, and now that had been taken from me. Mila. Came out a sob. I didn't even realize I was crying. I never cried. I looked down into her angelic face. It was okay. I could cry for her. She deserved it. She was a good person and she was good to me. If I was going to cry over anyone, it would be her. The tears began to fall, as the panic and terror instilled by the darkness was chased away by grief. The man's hand grasped my shoulder. There's nothing we can do for her. His voice was strained and hard, like he was trying to show compassion, but he was still pissed. My eyes snapped to him. What happened? Did you do this? My voice was low and coarse. I could feel the quick temper rising to the surface again. I had no fighting skills to speak of. I didn't think I've actually ever punched anyone for that matter, but rage burned inside of me. This dickweed jet took away the only good thing in my life. I had nothing to live for now. What did I have to lose? I released Mila, laying her gently back to the ground at the edge of the light. Her platinum blonde hair draped perfectly across the ground. I turned fiery eyes to the man. My fists balled as I stood to face him. He took a step back with his hands held up. Whoa, wait. I didn't kill her. I was trying to protect her. She's my sister. I hesitated. He had said that before. His hair was the same platinum and his eyes the same blue. His features echoed a family resemblance as well. She had spoken of her brother on occasion. Anton? I asked. He nodded. Yeah, What happened? I growled. His eyes snapped over my head. That, he hissed. My head whipped around. The alley filled with darkness like it was a liquid. What the he? I started. Anton grasped my arm and pulled. The familiar fear I felt earlier gripped my throat. I'd never seen the darkness actually move before. It was coming at me. The soft edges of it blurred out everything as it melted forward. The streetlight above us flickered and buzzed before it shorted out, leaving us in complete darkness. Shit, Anton spat. Come on. He tugged at my arm. My eyes adjusted as much as they could. My vision wiggled and my body swayed, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I was frozen. It was hard to tell if it was from terror or curiosity. My fingers grasped Mila's arms as I watched the darkness come. I knew it was over. Deep down I knew it had me. The inky blackness rolled over Mila, enveloping her other side. She started to move away from me. My heart jumped. At first I thought she was still alive, but quickly realized it was the darkness. It was taking her. No, Isa. I gripped her arm to hold her in place. It wasn't taking her. I didn't care what this black thing was or how afraid it made me. Mila wasn't going anywhere. She deserved better. I pulled. The darkness pulled harder. More of its smoky black depth curled over her. It yanked her and I with it. I was dragged across the ground, ripping larger holes in my bloody knees. No. I screamed as I slid across the pavement. Anton stumbled forward, overcoming his shock over either the darkness or my sheer stupidity. He grabbed my arm and anchored us. The blackness pulled. I pulled back. The absurdity of this tug-of-war over my dead friend's body was starting to register. Was I really fighting with the absence of light? A yank sent us tumbling forward. The darkness swirled. It covered more of her body as it reached up her arm toward my hand. It felt like pins and needles as it wrapped around my arm. I looked down at my disappearing arm. What the fuck? I whispered. I still didn't let go. I don't know why. Maybe I had just had it with things going wrong tonight, but whatever this was, it wasn't going to eat my friend. You can't have her, I breathed through gritted teeth. The darkness climbed up my arm. I couldn't even feel my hand anymore, but I willed it closed anyways. The blackness jerked us forward. Anton seized my other arm. He yanked me back. Just let go, stupid bitch. You're going to get yourself killed for nothing.
No.
Not for nothing. For Mila. I shrieked. My voice had never sounded like that before. I bit my tongue in surprise. The smoky dark jerked again, drawing my attention. Anton planted his feet. I was caught in the middle as the force of each side pulled on me. One of the two entities jerked hard. A sickening pop filled my ears as my shoulder separated from my arm. My cry pierced the air as I flew backwards. Anton and I tumbled over each other across the ground. I scrambled to see Mila again, my vision shaking from the vertigo. The streetlight flickered back on as my vision settled. She was gone. Chapter 4 Figure. As if from a distance, I registered the scramble of Anton's footsteps. He was speaking to me, I think, but I couldn't process it. I just kept staring into the empty alleyway. Absently, I rubbed at my aching arm. The pain eventually drew me out of my state of shock. I looked around as if I had just come back to my body. The dark pressed in around the pool of lamplight. My purse's contents lay scattered about the circle. Mila was gone. There was nothing, just the empty alleyway that slowly took shape as my eyes adjusted to the light again. Behind me I heard footsteps and heavy breathing. When I turned around, Anton was booking it like his ass was on fire. Hey! I shouted after him. Where are you? This isn't over. I'm not sure what I meant by that, but I said it anyway. I sagged heavily as he turned the corner. I was left alone again, surrounded by darkness. And Mila was dead. And she was gone. I reached for my fallen phone, but the fingers on my hand twitched with pain from the dislocated shoulder. With a curse, I snatched it up with the good one. I dialed the phone. 911. What's your emergency? The female voice asked in a formal tone. I hesitated. The phone picked up so quickly, I hadn't had time to think about what to say. My friend is dead. My voice trembled. What's your location? I'll send an ambulance. She's gone. She's not here. I said in an empty voice. I wanted to say more, but I couldn't get the words out. What's your location? My eyes sought the darkness. There was nothing. I'm under a street lamp. Ma'am, tell me what happened. I was running from it.
I tripped over here.
She was dead. Then it took her. I stumbled over the words. My tongue felt thick and my mind slow. I must have sounded like a moron. Who took her? The darkness. Ma'am, it's a federal offense to prank call emergency services. The phone clicked. I kept the phone held to my ear and blinked. She didn't believe me. Hell, I didn't believe me, but it was true. The darkness took her and Anton. He ran. They left me all alone in the dark. I looked around again. My fallen purse and its scattered contents across the ground were the only things surrounding me. I looked back where Mila had disappeared. There was nothing, just empty space that led back to the alley. I curled my knees up to my chin and held my legs with my good arm. Tears rolled down my face. I was alone. Mila was gone. And I was so fucking scared. I shuddered at what I'd witnessed. I had seen the darkness move like it was alive. It swirled. It moved. It devoured. I opened and closed my right hand, remembering the pins and needles feeling that crept up it. It still felt strange, almost like a stinging sensation that twisted up my arm. I didn't dare move the other one. It felt wrong. Something was out of place. I could feel it crunch and separate as I shifted. A smear of red that looked dark gray in the lighting covered the denim of my jeans. My chin was still bleeding from my initial fall from my initial flight. If I hadn't have looked, if I hadn't have run, maybe I would be home by now. But Mila would still be dead. I wasn't one of those people that connected with others well, at least not anymore, but my heart hurt for her. She didn't deserve to die. Someone else did, maybe even me, but not her. She was too young. She was too kind. Why couldn't someone bad die? Or someone that wouldn't be missed, someone inconsequential. Someone like me. Tears started to streak my cheeks, adding to the damp blood on my jeans. I wasn't a crier. Usually it was like one sob and it was all over, but they just kept coming. I couldn't stop them. They dripped down my face and rolled off my chin. Mila's life was over. I didn't dare to think how that was going to change my life yet. I couldn't. It made her life feel cheap and made me feel selfish. Like, how dare you die, now how am I supposed to pay rent? What a horrible thought. I pushed it aside. I would deal with that later. Right now I needed to pay my respects. I needed to feel this grief, she deserved that much. I tucked my head into my knees and let the tears flood. As long as the light held steady, I wasn't in a hurry to go anywhere. I woke with a sudden rush. My heartbeat pulsed fast in my ears. I must have drifted off at some point in my pity fest. Now I was acutely aware of a presence. Someone or something was here watching me. I wondered how long I had been here. It was still dark, but my legs felt cramped. I strained my ears. I didn't hear breathing or footsteps, or even scuffling for that matter. But I knew someone was there. Fear didn't threaten to overwhelm me this time. So what was it? Very slowly I lifted my head. My eyes shifted over the darkness lining my safe little street light. After a careful search, I spotted a figure leaning against the brick wall across the alley. Maybe it was a figment of my imagination. My eyes narrowed as I strained to see it more clearly. Was it a person? Or was it just some trash? The more I looked, the more the lump seemed to form a person. A faint glow like that of a burning cigarette formed around the figure. Now I was sure it was a person. What must they see when they look at me? A sad, pathetic lump of a human bawling her eyes out in a pool of shallow light? I brushed the salt from my dry tears off my cheeks with the palm of my good hand. I kept my eyes on the burning cigarette, but as I stretched my legs, I was wary of the figure but not afraid. Things I could see were less scary than things I couldn't, even though they were potentially more dangerous. They were actually real. I looked down as the dried blood pulled the skin on my knees as I straightened them. When I looked up, the figure was gone. What the hell? I only glanced down. Maybe it was just a figment of my imagination the whole time. I searched the blackness again. This time the figure was closer. As I stared, the figure became more defined as a person. The burning cigarette appeared again. That was strange. My heart started to beat faster. Maybe I was losing my mind. I kept my eyes on the person this time. Slowly my hand crept around me, gathering my fallen contents into a pile next to me. My fingernails scuffed the pavement painfully. My hand jerked and I lost eye contact as fresh blood sprung to the surface. When I looked up, the figure was gone again. The darkness outside my circle was as empty as before. I must really be losing it. Chapter 5 Home. Very slowly, I collected my contents into a pile. With a few scooches of my ass, I was able to reach my broken purse. After an armload of stuff, it was full again. The broken strap lay useless next to it as the fake leather lay like bloated roadkill on the asphalt. I needed to cut down on the stuff I carried, but that was a problem for another day. Today's problem was to get home. I crawled to my feet. My left shoulder screamed in pain with the movement, but I soldiered through it. If anything, that was one thing I was good at. I could soldier through a lot of pain because I got hurt a lot, but mostly because I was raised to be tough, at least physically. I had to get home. I couldn't stay here all night, especially if I was losing my mind. I bent over slowly and picked up my purse. The gravel in my hand and the fresh blood stung. I knew I was getting blood on everything, but I just needed to get this done. When I was finished, my purse hung by the singular strap as I pinched it to my side. With a deep breath, I stepped out of the safety of the light. I could do this just one step at a time. I would not look back. I would not let this fear overwhelm me again. I could feel it threatening me. It increased its choke on my throat with every footfall. I wouldn't give in. I couldn't give in. I had to keep moving. I took deliberate steps. I kept my eyes straight ahead of me. I had no idea where I was, but I kept moving because I had to. I had no choice. I struggled with the fear. I tried to come to terms with the darkness, with the things I had seen or the things I thought I saw. So what if the darkness got me? So what? Why did I care so much? I should just let it get me. Every footfall was painful. The blood from my knees oozed out of the wounds. I could feel it smearing between my slacks and my leg. It stuck to it, then ripped away with each step. Even my socks were sticky with it. I was going to be a mess to clean up when I finally made it home. After several twists and turns, I eventually found the main street. My heart thumped loudly in my ears. I tried to keep the shake from my hands as I strode forward. The shake made my shoulder hurt that much more. This fear was irrational. I would be fine, and if I wasn't, well then let it be so. Let it get me. After my harrowing yet eventless journey back to my apartment, I climbed the flight of stairs to my one-bedroom apartment. The door handle turned easily beneath my hand. Mila must have left it unlocked again. I pushed open the door. Breath caught in my throat as I stifled a squeak of surprise. Anton was standing in the hall with only a pair of jeans on. His skinny form wasn't much to look at. In this better light I could see he had the same platinum blonde hair as Mila. His eyes were wide in surprise. "You," he hissed. I somehow recovered my voice. "Anton," I said hoarsely. He narrowed his eyes at me. "How do you know my name? You said you were Mila's brother. What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" "I live here." He looked around. "Here." I pushed through the doorway and dumped my purse on the table. I spun, quickly latching the door shut, then locked it frantically. I took a breath to relax, trying to push the fear from my mind. When I turned back around, I pinned him with glaring eyes. What the hell happened? Anton stiffened. "With Mila." I looked at him like he was stupid. He averted his eyes. Well, I don't know. She's dead. Yeah. And now she's gone. Yeah. And he shrugged. I found her like that. Bullshit. His blue eyes looked at me sharply. Tell me what happened. He ran a hand through his blonde hair. She called me, but I couldn't hear her, so I tracked her down with the GPS on her phone. There was this thing. And shit, I don't know. Got her. You saw it. I gave a slight nod. That's it. You came out of nowhere and trip on her and then she was just gone. And then you ran away. He ran his hand nervously through his hair again. Yeah, I fucking ran. Survival of the fittest. I tried to help you, but you wouldn't let go. What was I supposed to do? Let it get me too. I don't know. You can't tell me you wouldn't have done the same thing. I slumped in the dining room chair. I was too tired to fight right now, I guess. An awkward silence filled the room. He sighed. Sorry about your shoulder. I shrugged with a good one. Does it hurt? I closed my eyes and nodded once. Shit. He walked over to sit across from me in the other mismatched dining room chair. So what's the deal with this place? Who lives here? He points to the sheets hung on a string across the living room. That would be Mila's room. I live in that one and we share the master bathroom. His face went a little pale. I see. I was too tired to see what he saw. Hoping he didn't ask me any more questions, I pulled myself back up and left him at the table. As I walked down the hall, I let my shoes slip off. When I finally made it to my room, I dropped onto my full-sized bed in exhaustion. When my nose hit the pillow, I smelled the unfamiliar scent of a man. I wrinkled my nose as I finally see what he saw. I flipped the pillow over and promptly passed. Chapter 6 Work. Sun streamed in through the pale pink curtains. It was an odd sensation for the morning since I was on the west side of the building. I blinked against the impeding light as I realized what the time must be. I rolled over, having forgotten about my shoulder. Cried out in pain. My body freaked, feeling like I was being beaten, and I promptly fell on the floor. This caused a surge of pain that rattled through my bones into the aching shoulder. My teeth rattled in my head with the concussion. After many minutes of recovering from the pain and the spinning vertigo, I pulled myself up using the edge of the bed to balance. As I stood, the sun streaked across my arm. I sucked in air with surprise that of course made me cough and sputter. When I caught my breath, I twisted my arm around to see it better. Swirling red marks wrapped around my arm from my fingertips all the way to my shoulder. I opened and closed the right hand as I flipped it back and forth. My eyes traced the spiraling marks. They were almost like claw marks. The events of the previous night slammed into me. I thought I was crazy, but here this was proof. Whatever had been in the darkness, or was the darkness, had left a physical mark. While I stared at my arm, my nose was assaulted with the pungent aroma of bacon. My stomach grumbled painfully. I finished the climb to my feet. I was still fully clothed in my slacks and work shirt. I stumbled through the door, down the hallway, and to the kitchen. The curtain to Mila's room hung open. Anton sat on her day bed with his bare feet propped on the coffee table. I cringed. I hated feet, especially bare, dirty man feet. He looked up in surprise. You are not pretty in the morning. I narrowed my eyes at him. Where's the bacon? His eyes shifted around in question. Oh, this morning. I made bacon this morning. I ate it all. My stomach went queasy. What I hated more than feet was pungent smells that linger but weren't actually cooking or edible anymore. I fought the nausea, then stomped across the room and opened the sliding glass door to the balcony. I breathed in the summer air, taking in just how late in the day it was, and how I was definitely late for work. What did you do that for? I shot him a nasty look. I live here, you don't. Deal with it. He shrugged. How long are you staying? I asked. How long is the rent paid? My stomach dropped at the realization. Until the 1st. And I don't make enough to afford this place on my own. So 2 weeks then? I let out a huge sigh. Are you going to do anything? Like pay your rent? No, about Mila. He ran his hand through his hair. What am I supposed to do? Tell the cops some weird fucking dark thing took her? I don't even know what I saw. No one would believe me anyway. I thought back to my brief 911 call. I knew what he meant. You could report her missing. I doubt they're going to find her. That's not really the point. He flipped his chin at me. You do it. I walked out of the room. I couldn't handle this. How could he even be related to Mila? He was her exact opposite in every way. I showered. My shoulder ached. The wounds on my knees, elbows, and chin stung as I let the hot water pour down on them. I dug the gravel out my hand with some tweezers while I let the hot water run over my back. I cleaned the wounds as gently as I could. When I stepped out, I dabbed some rubbing alcohol over each scrape to try and disinfect it. I should have used hydrogen peroxide, but I really didn't have the time to sit and wait for it to do its magic. My reflection looked like a cleaned-up nightmare. What was I supposed to do now? I didn't even know what happened. Was I just supposed to keep on living? Keep on going? Well, I had to make rent. I had to work and try to survive. I couldn't just give up even though more than little of me wanted to. I dumped the stuff from my purse in an empty grocery tote bag. It hung heavy and bulky at my side, but I couldn't afford to waste any more time. I headed out the door and made it to work only 3 hours late. I slunk through the back entrance, casting a nasty glare at my burnt orange Hornet on my way in. The manager caught me in the workroom. The tall bearded man stood next to my cubby. "You're late and not even a call from you. And where's Mila? She didn't show up for her shift this morning." I turned to face him. His face drew into a frown. "What happened to you?" "Mila's dead." The words sounded cold on my lips. He stared at me, maybe trying to decide if I was lying. "Dead?" I nodded. "How?" "I don't know. She was just that way when I found her." "You should maybe take the day off then." I shook my head. "I can't. I need the money. I can't afford rent without her." He nodded solemnly. "How about you stock the shelves today?" "Okay." My voice was hoarse and quiet in my ears. "Can I leave before it gets dark?" He looked past me out the window of the door. "I really need you to close if you can. I'll make today overtime if you do." I nodded. "Okay." I spent the rest of the afternoon stocking shelves in the harsh fluorescent light. I could feel a headache starting in the back of my skull. As the store emptied, I took over as the only cashier. The janitor came in and started cleaning at 11. My eyes roamed to the open windows at the front, looking over the nearly empty parking lot under the night sky. I wondered what it would be like tonight. Maybe the darkness would get me this time. Chapter 7 Vanish. I packed my stuff from my cubby into my tote. It was time. I was the last one again, left alone in the light of the workroom. I stepped out the back door. My finger hesitated above the light switch. I knew I would get in trouble for leaving the light on, but I just couldn't do it. My hand shook. I couldn't make it flip the switch. I closed the door and locked it, then pressed my back against the door. The parking lot lay out before me, cast in the yellow glow from the store sign above. The Hornet was the only car in the lot. Damn thing. I briefly considered trying to start it again, but no, it wasn't worth the effort. My eyes scanned the lot, then past the bushes to the street. The more I stared, the more images of unknown scary things flickered through my mind. No, I would not start that again. I banished the thoughts. They never completely left me, but I buried them beneath my grief for Mila. I felt the familiar being watched feeling. A burning cigarette caught my eye from across the street. The more I stared, the more the figure grew defined. It looked like that of a man, well maybe. Or my fears were conjuring things again. Was he really there? Was he really watching me? I ducked my head and looked at my worn Converse shoes. When I looked up, he was gone. I must be going crazy. I was just seeing things. I clutched my tote tightly and took one brave step away from the door. I could do this. I could make it home again. And so what if I didn't? My life hadn't amounted to much in my almost 21 years as it was. I never did anything useful with it. I certainly had tried, but there had never been enough money or enough opportunity for a country kid like me. Every time things were going okay, a goddamned bomb got dropped on me. I was almost able to balance student loan payments, rent, and car repairs, but no, now my friend was dead and I was going to be homeless. I felt horrible for lumping the two in the same thought, but it was true. I was fucked. My steps grew more determined as I walked. Let the darkness get me. I had nothing. I was nothing. If only I could let this fear go. I would let the darkness take me and be the nothing that I was. I made it across the parking lot to the street corner. Another look around showed the streets empty of cars, of people, of all life. How could it be this empty? It was only midnight. Didn't anyone go out at night at all? Why was our store open so late if no one came out this way anyway? I crossed the street and turned the corner. The silence rang in my ears. I could feel the headache in the back of neck growing as the hum in my ears grew to deafening silence. The streetlight ahead flickered. It was coming. I could feel it thrum deep down in the pit of my stomach. Fear rose in my throat as it came. Those images of scary things with teeth and claws flooded my mind. My vertigo took over, causing me to drift as I walked. I stilled. The ring of silence overtook my ears with so much intensity that I clapped my good hand to my ear. There was nothing I could do. If I ran, it would be that much worse. My heart sank. I had nothing, I was nothing. Let it have me. The pins and needles started in my toes. I could feel it crawling up my feet. The darkness was here. It had found me. Kira. My eyes snapped up. A man was running towards me. Why was he? Kira, keep going. Anton shouted. I blinked. Come on. I wrenched one foot forward. It felt like it was stuck to the ground. I stumbled. The sensation of wanting to walk forward and not being able to triggered my vertigo. I went down. My bag broke the fall of one elbow, but I skinned the palm of my hand as the injured one skimmed the pavement. My legs felt tied down. Anton reached me and pulled at my arms. My knees dragged across the pavement. He was surprisingly strong for such a skinny guy. Get up. Wah. Run. He said as he pulled me from the grasp of the darkness. I kicked my feet like I was fighting tightening fingers around my legs. With each inch I grew freer until finally my foot pushed off the ground. He pulled me after him. I slowly caught my feet under me until I was running. He turned and pulled at my good arm, dragging me after him in a dead run. We ran. I had no idea where we were running to. But eventually the streetlights flickered back on. He kept going, pulling me along with him. By the time we reached the stairs to the apartment, I was huffing so hard I couldn't stand. He released my arm and I sagged against the stair rail. After several gulping breaths, I looked up. I still couldn't form words, but I was hoping my intense stare conveyed my question. Get inside, he ordered. He wasn't even breathing hard. What? I huffed. He pushed me up the stairs with both hands on my shoulders in a forceful shove. I would have fought just on principle, but I couldn't hardly breathe. I stumbled into the apartment and managed to land in the dining chair. He locked the door behind us, then leaned against the door looking relieved. What the hell? I puffed. How did you even know I was? He ran his hand through his hair. Take better care of yourself. You look terrible. With that he turned into the makeshift bedroom and drew the curtain closed. What the fuck? You can't expect me not to ask questions. Anton. I waited outside the curtain for a minute. When it was clear he wasn't going to answer me, I ripped the sheet out of the way, threatening the integrity of the whole clothesline. I looked around the messy room. He was gone. The bed was empty, the glass door was closed. He was just gone. I would have heard the sliding glass door open or close, so where did he go? I walked to the door and looked out on the 3-foot balcony. Down below on the dark street corner I saw the burning red ember of a cigarette butt. Just like before, the more I stared, the more the figure of a man took shape. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass as I watched him. Was it Anton or someone else? And why was he always there? A chill ran up my spine. Maybe he was the darkness. What a silly thought. I pulled away from the glass. I was being absurd. Absolutely freaking crazy. I busied myself with making pasta from a box. As the water boiled, I rubbed my aching shoulder. I really needed to get it looked at. I set my alarm for 8 a.m., scarfed down the hot fake cheese noodles, then passed out with bowl still in my hand. I woke with a start to the annoying beep of the alarm clock. The empty bowl and fork tumbled off the bed with a clatter. I punched the clock until it was quiet, then slowly got ready to go to urgent care. I passed Mila's bedroom. Loud snores filled the room. I pushed the curtain aside to find Anton draped across the daybed with one sock on and no shirt. Anton, I said sharply. He didn't move. Anton. A grunt escaped him, then the snoring returned. My eyes squeezed shut as I rubbed at the headache settling between them. My life couldn't be more of a mess right now. I hauled my heavy purse over my shoulder and headed out. Chapter 8 Hospital. I waited on the hospital table for the doctor to show up. I was dressed in one of those paper gowns with my ass hanging out. I really didn't think it was necessary, but the nurse insisted. They had already patched up my scrapes on my knees, palms, and chin. I felt like a mummy wrapped in bandages. I was just waiting for the doctor to show up and put my shoulder back into place. I twiddled my thumbs together and stared at the wall as I waited. My eyes went out of focus as I stared. The shadows around the room pressed in. A red spot appeared in my peripheral vision. I slowly turned my head to see the faint outline in the shadows. A knock at the door snapped me out of it. The hospital room was bright and clean. Kira, can I come in? Yes, sorry. Yes, please. The doctor arrived with his professional tablet and his professional smile. Seems you have a dislocated shoulder. I nodded. He probed me with a few fingers. You're going to feel some pain as it moves back into place. I'm going to reset for you, okay? I nodded. My shoulder released a sickening pop as it slid back in place. I stifled a scream that came out a half moan, half hiss as the dull ache turned to sharp, horrible pain. Then back again. There we go, that should do it. the doctor said way too cheerily. You'll need to ice it for the next few days and no strenuous activity for a while. You don't want it to pop out again. And stay off your bicycle until it completely heals. We don't want another repeat accident. I smiled tightly, trying to hide the lie I told him about riding a bike. Sure. The nurse will be in shortly. He disappeared through the door with a smile and a wave. I rolled my eyes as she left. Shortly wasn't the usual speed of doctors' offices. I realized this was urgent care, but my knee didn't seem so urgent anymore. No one would be hurrying my direction. Payment was already taken care of by state health insurance, and it's not like they would admit me. Normally I would wait, play by the rules as it were, but today I had no patience. I redressed then slipped out the door. Urgent care was full of people, but everyone moved at a snail's pace. I ducked my head as I scurried down the hall. After a few quick turns I was just about to leave the secure area when a shadow caught my eye. I stopped in my tracks. A door cast a shadow over a dark room down the hall. As I stared, a figure defined itself from the shadows. The burning red ember burned like an eye. I felt my heart freeze. Was I really seeing what I thought? Everything in my body screamed at me to move. I just needed to keep going towards the exit. I was almost there. Everything except my damn mind. If curiosity killed the cat, then I was about to sprout whiskers. My body turned towards the open door. Before I knew it, I was standing looking into the room with the glowing ember. The smell of charcoal lingered in the air. The fluorescent lighting lit only the door's entrance. Beyond it, the room was dark except for the red eye. I hesitated. Stepping into the shadow on the floor felt like a choice. My heart thudded. My vertigo swirled at the edges of dark and light. I focused on the red glow swimming in my vision. Who are you? I whispered into the darkness. The ember flickered then darted around very unlike a cigarette butt. You know the answer to that, a deep voice echoed. Something about it was familiar, but I couldn't place it. My head tilted in question. Was he making fun of me? What? You know me, he said the word slowly. I really wanted to argue for some reason, but a little voice in my head was screaming at me to shut up. I clamped my teeth down on the inside of my lower lip. When I felt like I had control over my mouth again, I said, No, I don't. A short deep rumble came from the figure. I couldn't decide if he was amused or pissed. Either way, it made my heart beat so fast I could hear it in my ears. I felt that was an odd response because I wasn't scared of him. Instead, I was fighting an urge to run to him. Come closer and I'll tell you. My foot lifted automatically to step forward. I stopped, my toe edging the dark shadow of the doorway. Was I really going to do this? As I aligned the pieces of what was going on, none of it made sense. I was in a hospital. I was speaking with a shadowy figure in a dark room in a hospital. My eyes snapped up. The hospital room was empty. The shadows were gone. The bed sat empty. The overcast light shone through the window-lit room just like any other. My foot still hovered above the ground. I blinked. What the hell? Everything just changed. Was I losing it? Maybe I needed to see a psychologist while I was here. That thought made me shudder. I didn't want to be crazy. Not like her. Miss Hatfield. Miss. A nurse called after me, wrenching me from my dark thoughts. I just need you to sign this paper before you leave, he said as he rushed down the hall towards me. I tore my gaze from the empty room to stare dumbly at him. He offered out the clipboard with a pen. The fingers of my right hand closed automatically around it, then scrawled a scribble across the line. Thank you, he said. The exit is just that way. He pointed behind me. I hope you recover from your car accident quickly. I bobbed my head once before he disappeared. My eyes swung back to the empty room. The empty lit room. I should have asked that nurse for help. I must be descending into madness. That was the only explanation. Just like my mother. Chapter 9. I showed up to work on time. The walk from urgent care wasn't too bad despite the sprinkles of rain. Other than the lower thighs on my jeans, I stayed pretty dry under my black rain jacket. Bill, the manager, gave me a professional nod as I entered. I shoved my tote bag in the locker, then donned my name tag and fake smile for the day. After a few hours of manning a cashier station, I could feel the heavy curtain of exhaustion coating my conscience. I smiled at the next customer and my eyes did a double take. I had been pushing food across the counter after greeting him, but this was the first time I actually looked up. He was bald with an average build, but his ears were all scraggly and pointed. I quickly looked back to my task of pushing items across the scanner. What the heck did I just see? I must be getting really tired. Or maybe he just had an ear deformity and it was weird for me to stare. And his eyes had been so green, not normal green, like crazy bright green. What was I seeing? $104.85, I said. He held out cash to me with long pointed fingernails that wrapped around the money. I looked up again and forced a smile as I tried not to stare at his ears. He gave me an odd look with a cock to his head. Like, what was I looking at? But did I really see it? Have a nice day, I tried in a cheery voice that may have come out a little sarcastic or frightened, I'm not sure which. He gave me that funny look again. Have a nice day, sir, the bagger said in a perfectly cheery tone. What's wrong with you? The boy hissed. Didn't he look a little odd? I asked in a whisper. The boy, Freddie, looked after the man in the long brown coat. Odd. Like what? My fingers flicked to his ears. I was just being rude. Maybe the man had just gotten caught in a fire and his ears were elongated and I don't know. I'm sure there was a perfectly good reason for it. I was just being judgy. Never mind, I think I'm just tired. Aren't we all? He retorted. I wasn't sure what a teenage boy had to be tired about already in his short life, but again I must be in a judgy mood or something. I resumed my task for a time. It must have been another hour or so. My feet hurt as I shifted my weight back and forth on the relief mat. Did you find everything okay? I asked automatically with a fake smile on my face. Yes, the woman said in very high squeaky voice that sounded like she just swallowed a bunch of helium. My hand hesitated over her milk before I caught myself and scanned it. I scanned the rest of her items. $5.96, I said. Here you go. Her squeaky voice was so distracting. I reached my hand out and opened to accept her change. Her violet eyes, yep, that's what I saw. Violet looked up my arm, following the angry red swirl. Her hands started to tremble before she dropped the money in my hands. I hit the change drawer and dropped the money in. I grabbed the receipt, but when I looked up she was scurrying away. You forgot your receipt, I called after her. What did you do? Freddie asked. My eyes followed her until she disappeared out the door. I don't know. Was it something I said? He shrugged. Maybe you're just extra scary today. I mean, her voice was kind of strange though, right? What do you mean? Like kind of high, like too high? He gave me a confused look. No, what kind of drugs are you on today and where can I get some? I'm not, I swear. It's just, what color were her eyes? What? I dunno, brown. But normal, right? Not like bright purple. Were they? They looked fine to me, but I wasn't really looking. I turned to the next customer. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe the doctor put something in my system and I didn't remember. Maybe I had a concussion or something. Whatever the case, I was definitely seeing things that weren't there. Oh God, and hearing things. What was my problem? I stayed alert the rest of the day, but nothing else out of the ordinary happened. By the end of the night I was left all alone again to close the store. The two weird people I had seen still ran through my mind. Why hadn't I paid more attention? Why didn't I ask Freddie more questions? I wanted to confirm if I really was seeing things. Closed my locker. It was going to be another walk in the dark. Maybe Anton would magically appear again. I stepped out the door, leaving the room lights on yet again before the door closed behind me. I locked it, then quickly turned around to face the dark. The yellow-lit parking lot stared at me just like it always did. My damn car too. I stepped forward while keeping my eyes on the wall of the building across the street. As I walked, the ember that wasn't a cigarette coalesced in the darkness. It was him. That man I spoke to. I had completely forgotten about that weird encounter this morning. Damn. I looked down as I cut through the hedge bordering the sidewalk to the street. When I looked up, the ember was gone. I looked down the street. The empty road stared back. Now I was truly alone. I had to get over this stupid fear. The dark wasn't going to get me. Everything I had seen was just a figment. Mila's body disappearing in the dark was just a construct in my mind I had developed to avoid processing her death. She wasn't eaten by the darkness. That was just crazy. She was in a car accident? I squeezed my eyes shut for a second. I felt like my mind was going to burst. I was crazy with grief, that was all. There was nothing more to it. I just needed to get over it, get home and get on with my life.
Chapter 10, Shadow Man.
I started marching in the direction of my apartment. There was no need for silly imaginary dark smoking figures and people with funny eyes or funny voices that only I saw. I was the problem. My fear of the dark was a problem too. I was so chock full of problems I should just end it all. My thoughts echoed in my head as my footsteps echoed through the empty street. The familiar fear started strangling my guts. It slowly moved up my spine until it was choking up my throat like I had swallowed a handful of marbles. I tried to ignore it, but my heart thrummed and the silence pressed in around me. It was coming. The thing that didn't exist, but somehow it was coming for me. I felt it just like the other times. This figment of my imagination had so much control over me that it felt real. I made it real. Spoon. Damn, why did I do that? Looking always made it worse. I faced a smoking black wall of darkness billowing towards me. It filled every crevice as it raced up the street, blackening out the street lights as it went. The image of it eating Mila and dragging her body away filled my mind. That was impossible. I turned. It was all imaginary. It wasn't really there. I stared straight ahead. There was nothing behind me. Every instinct in my body told me to run. My heart jammed in my chest, my throat closed tight, and even my hands shook. I wanted to run, I needed to run, but I wouldn't. I stared ahead, focusing on the building at the end of the street. It was only a block away. Each step felt like I would break into a run, but I held steady. I wouldn't let this construct hold me anymore. In the darkness, the ember flickered into view. Another thing that wasn't there that was now there. You'd best be running. A gruff whisper sounded in my ear like he was next to me, but I knew it was the figure ahead of me. That wasn't even possible. I really was going mad. I just needed to fight this so it would stop. I had to get over this. You're not real, I whispered to myself. None of this is real. Maybe it didn't used to be, but it is now. The ember flickered and became brighter. You're not real. I'm serious. It's going to get you. Shut up, I said sharply. Look at it. I'm not running. Then you're going to die. Then let me die. Then you're stupid. Something about the way he said that made me hesitate a step. Why did that sound so familiar? I could feel the tingles of the darkness around my feet as I stopped. Why do you even care? You're just a figment, a construct, you don't exist. I was only 10 feet from him. In the shadows I saw him shrug. I'd be out of a job. He took a puff. Now keep coming, little girl, or else it really will get you. With a deep breath I slowly turned. The wall of darkness pressed all around. It rolled out in clouds to all sides of me. It surrounded me like an ocean wave. I stumbled backwards toward the figure, half turning as I did. I scrambled as I fought for footing away from the wall of darkness. It sent tingling sensations up my legs as I tumbled forward just in front of the figure. I braced for impact. I was going to ruin another pair of work slacks, not to mention tear open my poor scabbed-up knees. Right before I hit the ground, arms caught me. The figure pulled me into a tight embrace. The tingling sensations coated my back as it pressed in around us, physically pushing me against him. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the darkness was not only sucking the light out of the world but also sucking the life from me. After a few moments the sensation passed. The streetlights flickered back on behind me. I didn't move. He didn't let go. We were stuck in this awkward hug, leaning against the wall in the dark. A low rumble emanated from his chest and I realized he was laughing. He was laughing at me. What's so funny? No, never mind. Forget that. What the hell is going on? I pushed away from him. There we go. He smoothed down the front of his leather jacket. That's better. Answer my question. The shadows from the streetlights cast his face in darkness. I couldn't make out the features or the color of his eyes, but for some reason I really wanted to know. The red ember floated around his head like a firefly. He stared at me hard for a few seconds as if reading my expression. You really pissed it off. My eyebrows scrunched down in confusion. I pissed the darkness off? He chuckled again. You sure did. I balled up my fists. I could feel my mind slipping. I was talking to something that was really here. No, I was about to argue with it. I pissed it off?
No, fuck no.
Pissed me off. It killed my friend and took her. Where'd it take her? What is it? Who the hell are you? The corner of his mouth quirked up as he made a small approving humph. You're just like her, he whispered. What's that supposed to mean? He shook his head and remained silent. Are you going to answer any of my questions? I asked. He shrugged. Depends what they are. What's the darkness? He shook his head. Why is it pissed? He shook his head. I balled up my fists. What the hell is that? I pointed at the glowing firefly-like thing. Oh, that's Ember. She likes to tell me what to do. Ember zipped around his head and dived at his ear. He swatted her away. She floated closer to me. I held out my hand. She landed in it. She had no form. She was only a ball of light. Despite the orange glow, it felt cool to the touch. There was a presence to her that felt oddly familiar. It's nice to meet you, Ember. Ember danced a circle in my palm, then floated back over to the man's shoulder. His chin lifted to look over my shoulder. Looks like my time it up. I turned as running footsteps behind me closed in. Anton was running full speed, blonde hair flying in a mess about his face. When I looked back, the dark figure was gone. Kira. he said as he came to a stop, breathing hard. Are you okay? I got a message to come help you. I looked around the wall for the shadow man. No, I'm definitely not. How come you always show up here at night? I asked. Anton shrugged. Always. This is my first time. And I got a message that said I shouldn't let you walk home alone. After what happened with Mila, I think it's probably a good idea. What did happen to Mila? He gave me a sideways glance. She was hit by a car. You were there, you saw. I stopped dead in my tracks. What the hell? Wait. Wasn't that what I was telling myself happened earlier? I squeezed my eyes shut. Anton stopped and turned to look at me. Are you all right? What about the darkness? The darkness? What? I just blinked at him. I must be going crazy. The freaking darkness. You dislocated my shoulder getting me away from it. It wasn't a car. It was the darkness. You saw it. I thought you went to the doctors today to get that concussion looked at it. Did they really let you leave? Anton, seriously. I'm not fooling around. Mila died. This big cloud came and took her. He stifled a laugh. Kira, I'm not fooling around either, but you sound crazy. She was definitely hit by a car, and I pulled you out of the way right at the last second. We were pre-partying for your birthday next week. They took her away in the ambulance. Don't you remember? How could this be? That seemed perfectly logical, but I didn't remember things like that. I was going crazy. My heart began thrumming again. I really was crazy. Are you okay? His breath was more even now. When I didn't answer, he tugged on my hand. Come on, let's get home. I think you need to get some rest. My mind sifted through the memories while we walked. What was real? I didn't remember a car. I didn't remember a party either. But what made more sense? A dark cloud and a shadow man with an ember or a concussion? Why didn't they check me out then? The ambulance, why didn't they fix my shoulder? They were kind of busy with Mila. What happened to the car that hit her? What? Did it hit her and drive off? Did it veer off and hit something? Did it flip? He made a funny face while he concentrated. I was kind of focused on Mila. How'd I get the concussion? I don't know. You fell when I pulled on your arm or something. Was there a lot of blood? What?
No.
That's a horrible question. Can we stop talking about this? You're making my head hurt. At least he knew how it felt. Are you going to pay rent? Do I get paid for walking you home?
No.
Then nope. Then you better be looking for a new couch to crash on. And find a place for Mila's stuff. Are you going somewhere? I can't pay the rent on my own. You don't have any cash anywhere? Don't you think I would have gotten my car fixed if I did? Can you ask your dad for money? I think he was helping Mila out before. He fell silent again. The rest of the walk home was quiet. I lay in my bed after a shower. I felt like I was losing my mind, but one thought kept me awake. There was no— Chapter 11, Laughter. My dreams were plagued with the walls of darkness. I couldn't get the image and the sensation out of my head. I woke covered in sweat and panting. It wasn't much of a sleep, but I had to get myself together. It was still dark outside, but the sun would be coming up soon. I peered out the window. In the alleyway below, the familiar ember faded into view. Was I really seeing things? My mind mulled over the night before and the conversation with Anton. What he said made sense. But there was no blood. I pulled on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. I needed to talk to him again. He was the only thing in my life that didn't make me feel like I was completely losing it. I jammed my socked feet into my pair of black Converse shoes before I pushed down the hall. Anton's snores filled the front room from behind the curtain. I didn't flip the light on, but I did grab my tote bag turned purse. I locked the door behind me and set off to find my figment. The alleyway below was empty. The edges of the building slowly became more crisp in the morning glow as I walked. I would find him. I would figure out what the hell was going on. After another street and another, I was getting nowhere. How was it when I wanted to find him, I couldn't? He just always seemed to appear when I needed him. This was lending evidence to the fact that he really was just a hallucination. I sat heavily on a bus bench. A few cars passed as I waited. As I stared across the street, the ember flickered into view. I got up. It vanished. Why was this so much harder than before? Are you looking for me? His deep voice from behind me made me jump. I righted my tote over my arm before I turned to face him. Yes. The growing light made him clearer than ever, but it was almost like he held an aura of darkness about him. He leaned against the wall. The floating firefly lingered about his shoulder. Am I crazy? Are you? You saw the darkness. He nodded. Anton doesn't remember it. He tilted his and nodded as if he wasn't surprised. I took a step towards him. Why? You must remember the answers on your own. You're the only one that can give me answers, I said with a little heat in my voice. He pressed his lips together in a frown. Look, it's getting a little light for me. Good luck with your search.
No.
Don't do that. I stared hard at him. If he left, I was going to see him do it. I was going to watch him vanish before my eyes. I didn't know if that would prove whether I was crazy or not, but it would mean something. Look, you just think I'm a figment of your imagination, right? So why would you trust anything I say? Because you might not be. Or you might just look like a crazy lady talking to an empty wall. He gestured to the street around me as a few passerbys turned their head towards my heated words. I refused to look away from him. Come on, what do you want me to do? Tell me the truth. I can't do that. Why? His eyes shot behind me to the people staring. Look, can you just look that way so I can leave? I narrowed my eyes. You can leave anytime you want. Ember flitted at his ear, flying erratically. He stared me down while ignoring her. Fine. He turned and walked along the edge of the wall. I followed close on his heels. I would see where he disappeared to. I would figure out what was going on and what happened to Mila. Don't follow me, he said. Why not? Just don't. He walked faster. I stuck tight to him. He turned the corner snug to the wall. Shadows coalesced around him in the growing light. I swiped my hand out to grab his sleeve, but it felt like it slipped through my finger just as I turned the corner. And just like that, he was gone. Shit. I slapped the brick wall with my hand, searching for, well, a secret door or something. Anything to figure out where that fucker went. People on the street glanced at me. I assumed my face had taken on an expression of surprise and fury. There was something going on here. That, or I was completely mad. People didn't just vanish. But I guess hallucinations did. The evidence that I was looking for seemed to just confuse me further. As I looked up, a man with goat horns and a goat-like beard walked down the street wearing a very nice-looking navy suit. I blinked, then rubbed my eyes for good measure. What the? He nodded at me with a smirk. I just stared as he continued past. No one else was looking at him, but he had foot-long freaking goat horns sticking out of his head. Wasn't that not normal? I mean, seriously? I scanned the rest of the street. A short older woman with bright pink hair was on the other side of the road. She carried a bag of mice. Their little white head popped over the edge of the bag, and she bopped them until they fell back down. One crawled up and over too quickly. She snatched it out of the air as it fell and she popped it in her mouth. I gasped. Her gold eyes darted towards me as she chewed the small creature. When she was finished, she smiled at me with a mouthful of bloody pointed teeth. I couldn't look away. She kept walking until she vanished around the next corner. I slid my back down the wall, half in horror and half in utter exhaustion. That was it. I was going mad. I was done. I had lost my mind completely. I was so frustrated with myself I wanted to cry. But I couldn't. It was never easy for me to cry, but I always felt better when I did. But here now I just couldn't. The tears wouldn't come to give me sweet release. I wouldn't be graced with release to clear my mind and work things over. Instead, I was stuck here baffled and frustrated. My mind had gone and all that was left was this weird reality that I was seeing things that weren't there. Instead, I began to laugh. It started as a giggle. Slowly it grew into a full belly laugh that brought tears to my eyes. The pitch grew higher as the laugher burst out of control into a full-on cackle. I had nothing, I was nothing, and now I was seeing things that were nothing. Mila was gone. I couldn't pay rent. My car was broken. This was it. A full-on mental break. I climbed to my feet. People scurried away from me as I shrieked out my madness. The clouds overhead darkened. Small droplets splashed on my white t-shirt. I walked to the middle of the street. I had nothing. I was nothing. I would always be nothing. My laugher grew tight and high. People stopped and stared. This was it. This was the end. I walked down the middle of the street. Cars honked and drove around me, stepping on the accelerator hard as they passed to show their impatience with someone having a complete mental breakdown. No one stopped. No one cared. They only watched the show. I must have walked 2 miles that way. Before I knew it, I was standing in the middle of the bridge over high cold water. My t-shirt was soaked through, but my body didn't shake. I knew it was the end. Every part of me knew that I was done. My throat was dry, but small giggles still escaped me. The crowd followed me with a healthy amount of space. Several people among them had colored hair or horns. I knew they weren't real. I was just seeing things. The thunderclouds overhead grew darker. The rain splattered harder, causing the crowd to disperse. I stood at the edge of the bridge looking down at the gray rushing water. I hated water, but it felt like a fitting end. It was cold, silent, and dark, just like how Mila went. Alright, Shadow Man, whatever hallucination you are, and whatever crazy shit I'm seeing, it's either this or the loony bin. And we all saw how that turned out for Mom. At least this way it will be quick. I set my hands on the edge of the concrete wall and climbed over. My feet took up the narrow ledge as I looked down. I have nothing, I am nothing, I will always be nothing, I whispered. I spread my arms out. A wall of darkness formed behind me. Big billowing clouds of it swarmed around me. My fingers and toes tingled until they were numb. It was time. I took a breath to calm my giggles. It was over. I tipped forward on my toes, ready to let gravity pull my weight forward. One last fleeting thought of the Shadow Man flitted through my mind. I remember his arms around me. He was the only person to hold me like that in years. I wished I had gotten a chance to see his face. It didn't really matter if he was handsome or not, but it would have given me something to hold in my mind rather than just the smell of embers. Alright, Shadow Man, here it goes. I tipped forward and let gravity take me. My body fell slowly forward until I was over the edge. My feet left the ledge. I was falling. The sudden rush in my stomach was exciting and frightening as the water rushed towards me. My body automatically tipped into a diving position with arms outstretched ahead of me. The cold water crashed around me as I entered the deep river. I was hoping to be passed out for this part. Instead, my arms flailed violently as I fought the frigid rushing water. The cold water seized my lungs as I coughed and sputtered. My mind wanted to stop, but my body wouldn't give up. It didn't matter. I wouldn't win this battle no matter how hard my body fought. It was over and I would finally be free of this world. I had tried my best, but it wasn't good enough. Chapter 12, Savior. Strong arms wrapped around me and dragged me through the icy water. My eyes wouldn't open and my lungs wouldn't breathe, but somehow I could feel everything going on. I was on the brink of death, but someone had dared to interfere. Why couldn't they just leave me to my inevitable fate? We reached the shore. I was dumped onto my back. I sputtered and gurgled water, but my body couldn't push it out. My half-closed eyes tried to catch a glimpse of the meddler as he pounded on my chest. Water gushed from my lungs. I turned to heaved it out. My eyes still wouldn't stay open. Even my coughs felt weak. The cold clung to my skin and clothes. I heard the man grumble out a few words. You are more trouble than you're worth, little girl. I'm not worth anything, I whispered. Just let me die. A deep growl escaped his throat as if he was contemplating something. After a long moment, arms lifted me up. I could smell the charcoal smell off of him. It reminded me of a campfire. Hold very still, he ordered. That was easy. I could feel myself slipping away again. My eyes closed and my body went slack. I had an eerie sensation of falling apart before I lost conscience. When I awoke, I was warm. The soft cotton sheets moved against my naked body as I pulled an arm free to wipe at my sleepy eyes. Firelight filled the room from a nearby fireplace. The dark sheets covered a king-size bed. The walls were made out of wood like I was in a cabin. The rest of the room was furnished in beautiful cedar furniture which included the bed frame, dresser, and nightstand. A navy oversized stuffed chair stood in the corner covered in what looked like my clothes. I sighed heavily. I was supposed to be dead. This madness was supposed to be over. Wait. I looked around. Could I be mad? The Shadow Man had been a real man. This was a real place after all, right? I patted the bed, accepting that it was tangible. Or maybe my delusions had completely taken over and I was really in the loony bin. I pulled the covers aside and stood. A full-length mirror on the wall reflected back my figure. I looked away quickly. I was no longer the wiry, strong country girl of my youth. City life had made me soft and junk food had made me softer. I dressed quickly. My fingers and toes burned with the damage of frostbite, making me feel even clumsier than I already was. My shoes were still wet, so I left them by the fire. I turned the knob to the bedroom door as quiet as I could. A living room with another fireplace on the backside of this one filled the room with crackling firelight. A navy couch matching the chair in the bedroom held the figure of a large man. His hands were behind his head. His chest rose in an even rhythm. His black t-shirt had crept up his torso in his sleep, leaving his abs partially exposed down to his dark jeans. I stared at the creasing V that disappeared down below the denim. My heart fluttered. I took several steps forward over the hardwood floor and onto the carpet. The firelight was the most amount of light I had ever seen him in. I was going to make use of it to finally see this damn guy's face. His dark hair was a few inches long and lay tousled in his hands. His dark eyebrows rimmed deep-set eyes and a hawk-like nose. Red scars laced his cheek on the left side. There was something about him that seemed so familiar, but it was like I was remembering him from a dream. Only he was older now. It was such a strange sensation, like déjà vu without the actual memory. My heart was skipping around in my chest in a strange way. My fingers reached out towards his lips. I desperately wanted to see how soft his lips were. I caught myself. Not only was I crazy, but now I was acting like a stalker. I pulled my fingers back to my chest, then shoved them in my jeans pocket. As if he could feel me staring, his eyes flicked open. We stared at each other for a few moments before he grumbled. "What? You should have let me go. You summoned me." My brows knitted as I thought. Summoned? How could I summon you? It's not like you're a demon. I didn't use candles and black magic. He gave me a hard look. Just go. If you really want to go kill yourself, go. This time don't call for me. He pointed towards the door. I crossed my arms. What did it matter? This was all a hallucination anyways. I followed the direction of his pointed finger and opened the door. I wasn't expecting to see a forest full of snow. My mind really had gotten creative. How could I have been in the city and now here? This just cemented the fact I was hallucinating. I walked into the cold snow with my socked feet. It was truly cold, but it didn't matter. I walked a ways through the snow-covered yard and to the trees. It was damn cold. My body shivered. My mind was making this so real. I cast a glance over my shoulder. The shadow man stood in the doorway of his cabin watching me. I turned back to the forest. There was no way I was even close to the city. It wouldn't snow for another 6 months. My shoes were still wet, so I knew it hadn't been that long. I really was going crazy. I was completely imagining a whole cabin and forest. I walked. And I walked. I was thoroughly lost after an hour. All the trees looked the same. My feet were numb. Snow started to fall. My stomach grumbled with hunger. But I had to end this madness. I was too chicken to hang myself or shoot myself. But a nice winter nap sounded like a peaceful way to end my crazy. I couldn't take the needles, the rocking, or the screaming that came with the madness. I had to end it while I still had a choice.